This is a commentary on the 21st anniversary of Super Mario RPG, the history of Super Mario RPG, the gaming historian episode. I'll be starting 5, 4, 3, 2 now. So he starts by describing how it's a different kind of Mario game. It's pretty cool how it talks about different type of game. I already thought this part of the episode that he was going to talk about how they incorporated the platforming into the game. I wonder how many lists he was going to go through for the best lists of JRPGs, Mario games, JRPGs, etc. Nintendo games. I wonder if he knows Jason Schreier. I don't know if I consider the villains of Super Mario RPG the most memorable. So there's a lot of video game history, but I wish you would incorporate more with geographical and U.S. Earth history, world history. It's pretty cool how it goes into the history of Square and its domination after of the JRPG market after it grew in post Red Racer. The government went really far. I was hoping he was going in the episode about how they were going to go with more Final Fantasy VII, more of the aftermath of Final Fantasy, the Nintendo era. That itself could be a very interesting history. Square and Final Fantasy. I also feel like they could have talked more about Enix compared to Square at the time, with the two competing. Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior was a big JRPG at the time as well. It's pretty interesting how JRPGs weren't that big in the West, with only 2 million sold compared to the Nintendo platformers. He talks about Super Nintendo versus Genesis, Mario versus Mickey. Super Mario Bros. Super Show helped. Mario Kart was successful. 8 million copies of Super Mario Kart. Over genres and growing to boost off the Mario Kart and Super Mario Bros. Super Show craze and Super Mario Bros. Movie craze are pretty big. This part I found very interesting when he's talking about the JRPG elements of Mario. Then later he goes into the history of the characters and how it gets very interesting later on when he mentions who worked on Super Mario RPG and who the later future of Super Mario RPGs later on in the show episode. Miyamoto's work was pretty good. You know, he was only mainly a consultant. It was still seemed to be very helpful to the game. He talks about the Mario universe, but I don't really think this is very Mario University. And not to mention that Super Mario RPG was very different from Super Mario. Peach fighting Bowser as a playable character. Not to mention that Peach was playable in Super Mario Bros. 2 anyway, so what's the difference? The development of Rare and Super Mario RPG is very interesting. He shows the cart, which is very interesting for people who want to know how real games look. Super Nintendo games look. Idea of having more characters on screen seems interesting. I wonder if in expanded versions they could have added more characters, especially with PS4-ish graphics and data. The demo disc powers is very interesting. I like a Super Mario RPG 2 where they had, or mod where they had the sword and the horse and all the magical elements, JRPG elements from Final Fantasy. Or an option to use both. Or adding a character that can use a sword and weapons. He mentions the Kulex optional character boss, which is interesting as well. So the idea seems very interesting. I don't know what Ted Woolsey was very Woolsey about the script of JRPG. It was comical, but like part of that was like the animation of Mario, quote unquote, talking, acting out scenes of the game. I like the shots of the cartridges in the game. Donkey Kong's character looks interesting. The history of Super Mario RPG being one of the last games for the Super Nintendo and how they were moving on to the N64 is very interesting. Not to mention, he didn't elaborate on this as much, but they could have talked more about Final Fantasy going to the PlayStation as well. He could have also talked about Final Fantasy going to the Sega or platforms being talked as well, but that would detract a little bit, although I would like the additional history. He talks about the Mario game holdover, 2004 holdover, Super Nintendo holdover, the height of the peak of the Super Nintendo. I don't remember how popular 2004 was. I'm guessing they had, I think the Sega Saturn had like 10 million, and then I don't remember how much the 2004 sold. He talks about the sword and the Smoothie Gang, the sword and the kingdom. Smoothie Gang was very different from Mario lore, I think. Very different from having Bowser as the bad guy. Rebuilding Star Road is very Super Mario RPG-ish. It just uses the characters. I think they could have added more characters. Mentions mini games, which I thought was very fun. I think that was missing in other Super Mario Bros. RPGs. The details are very good, considering that 16-bit most 16-bit animations aren't as expressive, don't have as many animations. A lot of cool optional enemies, etc. Especially in the speed run. Birdo. I like the asymmetric view concerning that it doesn't screw up like where you would work on the control pad like it does with like Knights in the Nightmare or a game like that, like on the DS. Even though Super Mario RPG came out earlier. Timing mechanic is very cool. It's definitely added to a lot of. I don't think there's a single Super Mario Bros. RPG that doesn't have timing mechanics. The history of the way they did the timing devices was interesting. I wonder if it's inspired by arcades, but overall, I just wonder where his source for that is. It's also like a sound rhythmic game, as mentioned in the IGN quote. Yeah, the fact that it was created by the Secret of Mana director is definitely obvious with how you have to fight enemies or avoid enemies to do battles. Also, the fact that Nintendo was involved in Earthbound could be a factor as well. Composer. I wonder if anyone knows who the composer for Super Mario RPG is. I think she did more rock for Capcom. Super Mario RPG. I haven't gotten that far in Super Mario RPG, but if there was big, small land, it'd be pretty cool. Like in Super Mario Bros. 3. Crystal bosses and Culex. I'm always curious about who you would choose for, like Wikipedia, who do you choose for giving good grades for an RPG or any game actually? Like not all the choices or all the people who do the sales are good. Also, Super Mario RPG, as mentioned in this, like didn't do that well. It didn't sell as well as the platformers did for Mario or even Mario Kart. It only made like 3 million copies sold. Meanwhile, Final Fantasy 7 would totally outsell Final Fantasy 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Or like 7 to 10 million or 12 million or whatever the sales numbers were for the PlayStation 1. I really want to get Paper Mario just because it's called, in Japan, just because it's called Super Mario RPG 2. I don't know if the humor was as good, but like the atmosphere and tone was definitely matching with Super Mario RPG. I don't know. I thought that Super Mario RPG was darker, unlike Paper Mario, and that paper motif sort of didn't go with me with Yoshi's Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island either. Mario and Luigi, meanwhile, works a lot better for me. Like 21 years later, still no sequel to Super Mario RPG 2. I mean, I don't see why the legal hurdles would be that bad. It would more like be business negotiations for making the game. Maybe if it was desperate, like during the Wii U times, they would have made a Super Mario RPG 2, in my opinion. But I don't think that would have happened in the Switch era, just because everybody's flocking over to the Switch now. The Geno Fighter Me is pretty good. I didn't know about that. Super Mario RPG game is a lot more interesting than most RPGs because of the timing mechanic. Not It's more action based and turn based as a result. But then again, it also helped that it was made by the Secret creator, so it's more action RPG involved. The Virtual Console information and the fact that PAL didn't receive it till like 2008 was very interesting. That's all for this episode, and he's gonna do that advertisement now, so I'm gonna end the commentary here.